Hello, and welcome to Coffee with Coach. So, it's not a house church, but it is a church that resembles a house. What the heck am I talking about? Stick around and I'll tell you on Coffee with Coach. I'm Steve Petty, and I have 3 goals for these videos: to help you become a better pastor and leader, to save you time and money, to help educate, motivate, and energize you to motivate and energize your church. So, the problem is, how best can we understand the nature of our church so that we can lead it appropriately? As I mentioned earlier in this series on understanding your church, the idea for this series comes from a 1984 book by Lyle Schaller, Looking in the Mirror. Full credit where credit is due. I've taken Schaller's ideas and updated them a bit, so they're a little bit more current. You may say the church has changed since 1984. How can this be relevant today? But Schaller's examples are based more on the nature of leading different size groups. As the size of the church changes, so do its requirements of its leader. My purpose here is to help you understand the different natures of different sizes of churches and the different styles of leadership required. If you lead your house-sized church like you treat your cat, the house will fall apart and you will fail. So let's go into the living room and I'll explain the nature and leadership required to lead the church that resembles a house. If you find these videos valuable, I hope you will subscribe to my channel. And if you have questions or comments, you can add them below or email me at steve@revstevep.com. So far, we've looked at cats and collies and gardens. Those 3 sizes of churches include 80% of all churches nationwide. Now we begin to get more complex. If your congregation averages between 175 and 225 in average attendance, then you are probably looking at a house-sized church. It represents about 5% of all the churches nationwide. This is the most awkward of all church sizes and the most difficult, and it requires a great deal of work from the local pastor. The awkwardness derives from the happiness of the relationships compared to the difficulty of the operation. This is not the simple garden with a variety of crops that can be easily handled by one pastor. It is not the larger mansion-sized church that has lots of specific staff to carry out the programmatic tasks required to maintain the buildings and the ministries. The house congregation seems happy, and everyone seems to know one another. There is a sense of strong congregational care for one another. But new people may feel like they are not part of the family and a bit on the outside of things. It is not uncommon for this size of church to have a membership of 400 or more, many of whom never attend. In happy times, attendance may ramp up to 200 plus, and in unhappier times drop down below 180, with little notice. So what do I mean by a house-sized church? Think of your own home. In an average-sized house, there are several rooms, and each room has a specific function. There's a family room where people can hang out together, a kitchen where food is prepared, a dining room, and a table for eating the food. There are several bedrooms and bathrooms, perhaps a garage, porch, patio area. Just to keep things fun, a typical house may have a garden, a couple cats, and a collie too. The church that is house-sized is large enough to have very specific areas devoted to very specific ministries. Besides the sanctuary, there's a fellowship area, a choir room, several offices, an adult and children's classrooms, perhaps even a youth room. As a step up from the garden church, there's a much greater likelihood that the house-sized church has several part-time paid staff: a choir director, accompanist, a secretary, administrative assistant, perhaps a custodian, a janitor. But most of the ministry areas are still led by volunteers, directors of Christian education, children, youth, maybe even a seniors director, a group of retired people who do some of the maintenance, office assistants, newsletter editor, etc. Paid staff probably have an office, either in the administrative area or within the area where their ministry takes place. it is probably not large enough to support a more than one additional full-time staff with full benefits. The first role for the pastor of a house is to be the leader of the staff. But since most staff are less than full-time, it will be difficult to bring them together for a meeting. Many will have other jobs which demand attention and time. Getting them all on the same page, moving toward the same goals, and feeling like a team all pulling together will be harder at this level and demand a larger amount of the pastor's time. The nature of relationships also changes. Pastors of Collies and Gardens build strong relationships with all the people and are rewarded with the love and affection of the whole congregation. These pastors serve their congregations directly, personally, one-on-one. The house is now too large for the same kind of one-on-one relationships with everyone. The pastor will have wonderful relationships with the staff, the key leaders, those members who take classes led by the pastor, or groups and committees led by the pastor, but not everyone. This may be frustrating for the pastor, but it is necessary if the organization is to grow beyond this size. The pastor of a house must learn a whole new set of skills and find a whole new set of rewards. Most pastors are not trained to do this, and the result is that we have pastors appointed to houses who operate them with a skill set they used successfully with Gardens or Collies, and quickly move the house church into a very contented garden or collie. It is an easy slide from a church with an average attendance of 150 down to 115, but money is tighter, staff are let go, until the size is comfortable for the pastor to operate. The successful pastor of a house will learn that their most effective roles are now congregational leader and staff leader. Most of the congregation will know the pastor as an effective preacher-teacher. The people who will experience the pastor in a pastoral caring role are those who have experienced some crisis, requiring the pastor to step in personally. Over time, the whole congregation will have experienced this love and care either firsthand or secondhand through a close friend who has been there, but it can take 3 to 4 years to reach that critical mass. The pastor who understands his or her most important role is the leader of the staff will understand that the staff now multiplies his or her care and leadership. It is much more likely that the staff and key volunteers carry out the ministry and are directly involved with all the church members. Thus, the wise pastor will find effective ways to lead the staff, encourage their creativity, listen to their concerns, and seek staff solutions to staff problems, rather than being directive or dictatorial. This pastor will develop a working style that allows them to have a group time with the staff and one-on-one time with each staff member. These times can be formal or casual, but they are critical for the whole organization. The ideal staff will see themselves as a mixed team, some paid and some volunteers, who are leading the congregation. They will not be threatened by the popularity of other staff, but understand the function of each job and each personality in the overall ministry the staff carries out. The pastor must exemplify these understandings and constantly work to keep the whole staff on the same page, coordinating pastoral care appropriately, coordinating the church calendar to the best efficiency of the congregational energy, and being a cheerleader for all the staff. The typical workload will often be between 50 to 70 hours, but some of this time can be spent working at home. The major new learning for a pastor moving up to a house is the critical role of delegating authority to the leadership team without micromanaging them. Since these key leaders are not full-time, but part-time and volunteer, the pastor needs to understand that they are paid in other ways. The care and feeding of this group is the key to the health of the whole church. Key leaders must receive the pastor's recognition, appreciation, and continued encouragement. They must feel fulfilled in this ministry. Not delegating authority competently and nurturing the staff fully will result in a frustrated team and pastor. The team will find it difficult to trust one another and sometimes openly express criticism of others. The biggest liability of the house church is that it will find itself in a financial desert. It has just enough money to get most things done, but not enough money to expand any area or effectively grow any ministry. Volunteers and part-time staff are simply not as accountable as full-time staff, and some ministries will go wanting or simply die on the vine. A pastor who wants to grow a house into a mansion has a monumental task. The church must add resources to grow the ministries, new staff, more rooms, additional parking, and a congregation willing to make the changes and accept the added complexity that goes with those changes. The cost per person is much higher at the mansion, so financial resources are also key ingredients. Most pastors are simply not prepared either administratively, pastorally, or psychologically to lead the house. So this awkward-sized church is typically in dangerous decline. Pastors who learn to lead a house and are willing to pay the price can, with concerted effort, grow the house into a mansion. Do you worship in a house? One additional note, after I published The Garden, I added a video about pastoral shift points between churches. You might want to check out that video as well. I'll leave a link for it at the end. I hope you found this video helpful. In the coming weeks, we will discuss the nature of ever larger congregations and how best to lead those increased sizes. Next week, the mansion. So again, I hope you will subscribe and like my channel and return in the weeks ahead to learn more about leading your church. See you next week on Coffee with Coach.